Picture a brand new Resident Evil fan. They just played their first ever Resident Evil game, and they're hooked, ecstatic, full of joy, jubilation. Not just finding a brand new game that they enjoyed, but possibly finding a brand new franchise that they can delve into and play more entries. And that eagerness naturally leads them to want to tell others about their newfound love. And so they go online and try to find maybe a community, maybe on social media or some videos online that basically tell others about how they feel and what to expect, and maybe ask some questions. And while you expect to be greeted with open hands and a warm welcome, well, you'll be greeted all right. Greeted with instant death, instant anger, rage, and absolute disgust from all different angles that leave you shell-shocked. Or long, prolonged death, anger, rage, whichever one you prefer. Pick your choice, pick your poison. Either way, this is a fandom that's going to leave its mark on you in the worst of ways, to the point where I almost feel sorry for anyone trying to join it at this point. What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil gameplay for you. And this is probably going to be my last video for a little while on the Resident Evil franchise for a few reasons. One is pretty obvious, because in a few days I'm going to be playing some Pragmata, so a brand new game that I expect to do a lot of content on, so expect that, and I'm real eager to get into that. But the other reason is it might be a little good opportunity to have an excuse to get away from the franchise. Not that I have anything against the franchise, it's one of my top 3 favorites, but more the BS surrounding it right now in terms of the fandom. Because I gave you a little prelude there, and the last 2 to 3 weeks in particular, maybe even month, dealing with this franchise, I'll say this right now, if you do not know what I'm talking about, I envy you, because I wish I didn't have to delve into it. But being a content creator unfortunately means you have to see everything, because I always get those comments like, I never knew about this before, and that really happens. And yes, I wish I didn't know about it, and yes, it does really happen, and it happens on a daily basis, it seems like. It's amazing how this franchise could be doing so well, but at the same time have so much anger and animosity amongst it. But what makes it even worse in the last 2 to 3 weeks is it's not just one instance. It's multiple instances where this fandom, more than ever, is trying to rip itself apart. And it makes me wonder how the future of this franchise is really going to be in the next 4 or 5 years. So, just to give you a little precursor of what is going on, what are these so-called things? Some of you might know, some of them you might not know, but which is limited to, but not all, is certain things such as, the whole DLC, who deserves to be starring in the DLC and why their character deserves to be in, the other characters need to get out here for X, Y, and Z, or the whole Leon ring scandal and determining who is the lucky woman or man that deserves to be married to LeonSKennedy, and why their ship needs to happen and everyone else needs to get the hell out of the way for X, Y, and Z. Or the whole concept of, do you really be determined as a fan or a diehard fan if you don't even have to play or even want to play the video games themselves? Or the whole Zack Krieger live action Resident Evil movie, which has divided even more people, determining what really needs to be in a live action Resident Evil movie. Does he even know what he's doing? X, Y, and Z. Or last but definitely not least, the recent one with a fellow YouTuber by the name of Crowdcat, basically posting another video with a war between Resident Evil 4 versus Resident Evil 4 Remake, which, if you don't already know, he was the guy originally behind the Soul versus Soulless, and you can bet how the fandom reacted with that one. Now, all those instances are not the only instances. They're just the ones I can list off the top of my head that have happened in the past 2 or 3 weeks that have basically had people within the fandom warring with each other in the worst of ways. I'm not here to talk about either one of those instances in particular, because that's not the main point of this video. The main point of this video is I want to highlight how it must be weird for a brand new Resident Evil fan who's never been in this fandom to enter this fandom. I can only imagine how they would feel, because think about it from their perspective, an outsider's perspective. They're coming in and they're seeing things at face value. They just released a brand new Resident Evil game, and it was very successful. It's the most fastest selling Resident Evil game, and this is a franchise that's been out for 30 years, so that's pretty impressive. And it's got great reviews, and everyone seems to be going all over this place for it. So they think, okay, damn, there's a lot of positives, and it seems like they're always releasing games. They've remade so many of their games. They've been well received by the vast majority of it, as well as ushering out brand new games. There's so many things that Resident Evil has their name on. It seems like it's a franchise that's been extremely successful. Only to do the worst mistake they could possibly do is try to join in the fandom and engage in conversation in the fandom. As there lies the biggest problem with this fandom. Nobody knows how to communicate anymore. I mean, hell, I think the Ganados here have better communication skills than an average person in this fandom. I'm always amazed that whenever I can actually have a conversation with another person that I don't know, and it remains a civil conversation. Even more so if it's a conversation where both parties don't agree, and yet they're still respectful and civil. Not in this fandom. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about. This fandom will find any excuse to throw you under the rug and just basically cuss you out, talk down to you, act like you just committed the ultimate affront to their senses and that you need to go personally because you are definitely the worst thing in the world over basically a video game franchise of all things. So if I were to give any advice to a brand new Resident Evil fan, for me personally, like, you always hear people ask, which game should I start with? Or, where do I go? Like, which one should I play? I always would tell them personally, play the ones you want to play. It's your time and money. You use that the way you want to do it. So you play it whatever you want to play and however you want to play it. Who am I to judge on you? And that's how I've always been. The other thing I would give them as advice is stay away from the fandom. Trust me, I've been in this fandom for over 20 years, and I'm not going to sit here with an absolute certainty to say it's the worst fandom in gaming because I haven't been a part of every fandom, and I know there's a lot of other crazy fandoms there, but I've never seen a fandom be a part of a franchise that's been extremely successful. I mean, being a part of 30 years in gaming and had so many successful games and so many critically acclaimed games is not an easy thing to do. And to be doing that consistently for 30 years, that's not something that people do overnight. But you talk to people in this fandom, they'll have you act like this franchise is like, I don't know, the Dino Crisis franchise where we haven't had anything, no new content for like, quarter century now? But anyway, getting back to the fandom, as I said, it's no surprise to me I've been in this fandom for over 2 decades, but to a brand new fan, it's got to be a shocking experience. As I said, from that outsider's perspective, and then trying to join in, just have a simple conversation, and they realize they can't talk about anything without getting their head taken off. They mention their favorite Resident Evil game or the one they started with. They'll get yelled at for starting a Resident Evil game. Oh, you didn't start with the right one. Well, you're not a real fan. You got to get out of here now. Or you didn't pick the right character depending on the scenario you started, or whatever the case may be, or you didn't use the right weapon. And I'm just like, it's funny how people are so anal about what other people do, but they can't seem to worry about the most important person, themselves. And it comes to the fact that people just can't communicate and talk to each other anymore. It's like everyone's got to mimic and do their way, their ideology. But, if you don't follow that 100% by the book, by the way they think it should be done, they lose their mind and they can't talk to you. As I said, it goes back to a lack of communication skills. And half these people, if you were to see face to face in real life, I can guarantee you they wouldn't talk to you like that. But behind the confines of a computer or any type of device where they can post online, they basically are unfiltered and they will say anything and not give two craps about it. Because to them, it's about proving you're inferior and they're superior at all costs. It's like life and death to them. To the point where I wonder if they're just like, I always joke about this, like they're hooked up to the computer, like it's like something from the Matrix. They can't disconnect from it and they're constantly on it. They have nothing else to do with their life, but they're going to sit there live online and just look for a fight. As I've said for this fandom is always looking for a fight. They're always looking to be offended and pissed off by something. Which leads me to my next thing, because I know some of you might be questioning, well, lately you've been not very pro Requiem as of late. Resident Requiem, you've released a lot of videos that weren't very nice to Requiem, but there's a difference, okay? And this is what I want people to understand, because it goes a part of the process. Yes, I didn't love Requiem as much as I wanted to. I think it's a solid game, just not a great game. But I had a lot of problems with it. But never in any one of my videos did I ever insult people who happened to like the game, or insult people who didn't agree with my way and ideology, because I respect people enough to have their personal taste and non-taste. I'm not someone that has to insult you to make my point. I never will be that way. Even if I don't agree with you, I've always said, at least give me your reason so I can at least understand where we're coming from. I don't insult people like a small toddler, or a little child, or an immature adult. I'm somebody that wants to remain civil and just simply tell you how I feel about things. And it's always in my opinion. So I always end my videos, that's my opinion, I want to hear your guys' opinion. Because how I see things is not the right way. It's just how I personally see it. I like to see other perspectives so I can understand how people got to that point in reasoning and thought of mine. I'm not somebody that feels like I have to put someone down because they didn't think the way I do. I always like to prefer to hear different people that think differently from me so I get that different perspective. But not in this franchise, no. Everybody's got to have everyone think the same way, and if you don't think or play or react the same way, they get assaulted by it. Like it's like an affront to their senses, and they're just pissed off and naturally angry, and it's like they want to stay in a constant state of anger over any trivial thing. And as I said, it's not about whether you like or dislike something. It's like if something is the greatest thing ever, you have to praise it as the greatest thing ever, or else. If something is the worst thing ever, you have to hate it as the worst thing ever, or else. And it's like, do you know how many people are on this planet? Or at the very least, Resident Evil fans? Do you know how many people that is? You think there's only one thing in Resident Evil that is going to be universally agreed on in this fandom? So why do we think like that? And everyone's always got their old little self-pity talk where they're always trying to victimize themselves and act like, oh, well, it was fine until they came in and ruined it, or this person came in and ruined it. It's like, dog, if you didn't have a connection to the internet or social media, not only do I think your life would be so much better, but it would force you to just find something you honestly like and stop worrying about what everyone else thinks about 24/7 and stop being affronted by everything that doesn't go the way that you personally would do it. Okay? Like, take a simple example, like Resident Evil 3 Remake. Game that needs no introduction because usually it's hated on by a lot. But I don't need to say something about it just to be like, well, I hated that. And I don't hate it. I think it's a solid game, not a great remake, but a game you can pick up and play and have some fun with. But I don't need to tell everyone that happen to say they like it, oh, well, you suck, you're not a real fan, and investigate their profile. Why? I got more better things to do. But on the flip side, let's just take Resident Evil 4, for example, since that's been in the news for the whole Resident Evil 4 versus Resident Evil 4 Remake video, part 2, is the fact that the original Resident Evil 4, if you don't already know, is my all-time favorite video game. And it's one of those north-south games where either A, you either love it and think it's one of the greatest games ever made for its influence that it has on gaming in particular, or B, you think it's the worst thing ever and you think it ruined the franchise. Now, here's where I stand. It's my favorite game, but I've seen both of these extremes all the time. And neither one really bothers or influences me to go in a prolonged attack or overlong praise and worship of the other side. Because at the end of the day, my feelings are unique to me. I will tell you my feelings, but it's never in a derogatory way where I have to put down everybody. At the end of the day, I respect people. If you didn't like it, you didn't like it. If you loved it, you loved it. But it's never this whole exposure in terms of I have to prove something to you. It's a game. You either enjoy it or you do. And maybe there's levels into how much you enjoy and how much you didn't. But I don't take you liking or not liking something personally because it's just a game. I simply just wish to know your reasons and that's it. And whether I agree or disagree is irrelevant. I just want to understand. That's the only thing I've ever asked for. But why people get so affronted based on that? I mean, just saying whether you like, for instance, Resident Evil 4 is automatically going to start a war by default. And that's just one game in the series. I'm not even talking about whether you like a character, whether you like a certain perspective of the camera. And to a brand new fan, it's insane. Guys, especially older Resident Evil fans, and maybe some of the ones who haven't been here that long, but, you know, if you have been in the fandom for a decent amount of time or a few years, we gotta do better. Especially for people just joining in, because when I joined in the fandom, it wasn't as insane as this. It had its problems, yeah, but it wasn't like this. Nowadays, it's just like, there's 50 subgroups. I say this all the time, Resident Evil fans. Picture 50 subgroups. 2 of them are civil and normal, and the other 48 will just kill you if you blink the wrong way. And for a new fan, like, what are they supposed to do? Like, there's no conversation. There's no interaction. It's just insult after insult. How can I make you feel lesser and prove that I'm superior at all costs? That's not a conversation. That's just you hoping everything is a one-sided conversation that worships your opinion over everything else. We gotta do better as a fandom. How can things get better if we're always so easy to fight everybody over every single solitary thing? We don't have to agree, but we can at least agree to disagree without being an ass about it. And that's why, honestly, getting away from this fandom right now, playing some Pragmata, doesn't seem like a bad idea. But as I always like to say, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you feel bad for new fans who have no idea how this fandom is like to want to join this franchise and interact with the fandom for the first time and seeing just how shell-shocking of an experience it is? And let me know what's your worst experience you've ever experienced for yourself or you just saw firsthand. Let me know in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Hopefully I see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.